Welcome back to the Truth and Justice Show. I made a promise. Wait till you hear this miracle story. I have a friend who's an exorcist in Mexico, in Guadalajara. And he was the driver for Father Aloysius, whose his cause is up for canonization. And then he became a Catholic priest because Father told him he should. And he did. And he tells me about a woman. He says, I have full confidence and wishes, wants to remain anonymous. But here's what happened. Her name, Alicia, used to travel with her aunt, Carla, and her little son, Francisco, to Guadalajara each month to do shopping. After arriving in Guadalajara, they stayed at a cheap boarding house, kind of like a hotel. The next morning during breakfast, Francisco, who was only 3 years old, ran out into the adjoining garden to play. After a short while, they heard Francisco screaming. He had fallen on barbed wire fencing, and one of the barbs pierced his eye. They immediately took Francisco to an ophthalmologist, right, who explained to them that the eye would have to be removed and then later replaced with a glass eye. He took the measurements of the eye and then gave Carla, later, replaced it with an eyeglass. So he didn't have he's going to replace it. He took the measurements of the eye and then put the eye that he abstracted out of the little boy's head in a flask, and then she placed it in her purse. Carla and Alicia returned to the boarding house before noon and placed Francisco in their bedroom under the care of a young woman who worked at this boarding house, which we call a little hotel. They wanted to have 2 hours free to go to church and pray for little Francisco. This is amazing. Wait till you hear what happened. Carla and Alyssa went downstairs to the church called Our Lady of Lighting. Did you hear that? Our Lady of Lighting? It turned out that it was the feast day, August 18th, of this little-known Marian advocation. And there was a special mass going on in her honor. The church was packed. It's Mexico, right? Carla became so emotional that she raised her voice as loud as she could to beg the Blessed Mother to return Francisco's sight. Remember, he doesn't have an eye. This behavior was so embarrassing to Alicia that she begged her aunt, be silent and try to reason with her. You have the eye in your purse. How can you go on like this? But Carla insisted even more. Dear Blessed Mother, you have to do a miracle. Return the sight to my son, and I will take your devotion to our town. As they walked into the boarding house after Mass, they saw the young lady who was supposed to oversee Francisco. But she was waiting on tables in the dining room. They asked her why was she not with Francisco. She replied that he was asleep. So she took the liberty to return downstairs. At that moment, Francisco's laughter came from upstairs. What little 3-year-old's going to be chuckling? Well, Alicia immediately shoots up the stairs and she sees Francisco, the 3-year-old, jumping up and down in the bed. My grandchildren do that. 3-year-old girl. He had both eyes in his head. What? The removed eye had been replaced by a real eye. Alicia said she fainted when she saw this. Yeah, you think? And so did her Aunt Carla when she arrived upstairs. Then they returned to the doctor with her son, who said this was obviously a miracle, and he made a written statement to that effect. Next, they went to the bishop's office downtown, and he also made a written document. I have kept Alicia's handwritten document in our archives. That's what Father Carpenter said. Now, remember, in the City of God, I put that on cassette tape many years ago. This is St. Augustine's final chapters of that book, City of God, says that contrary to what we usually think, there are more miracles at present than in the time of Christ. We just don't hear about them because they sound too difficult to verify and pass on to our friends, so they don't get much beyond the close witnesses. Now, that story reminds me of a story from Padre Pio. And you probably heard this story many years ago. When you read books on Padre Pio, you get them. What happened is a woman who didn't have a retina. She was blind. She went to see Padre Pio, and by golly, she went to see Padre Pio and asked for a miracle, and Padre Pio said, your prayer has been answered. And the woman started to see. But without a pupil, you can't see. It just doesn't work. It's like riding a bike without wheels. They don't work without wheels on it. So they took her to the doctor, and the eye doctor said, wait a minute. There's no way you could see this. Well, let me give you a test. They test her. She's got perfect vision. See, this is something I share with you, these stories, because you'll never forget that story about the little boy, Francisco, in Guadalajara, Mexico, who poked his eye out on a chain link fence. And it was actually barbed wire. And then the doctor takes the rest of the eye out and he puts a glass eye in, measures it up. And then several hours later, after mom and the aunt pray for a miracle, the little boy wakes up from his nap and he's got a brand new eye. So, folks, I get people who call me a lot, or I actually made some calls for people for the Spiritual Warfare Conference, and the lady goes, I can't believe you called me right now. I'm having a family emergency. And I said, dear Lord, use me for that. So we had a good conversation, spiritual conversation about her situation. And she said, I just can't believe it. I said, well, God loves you. He uses knuckleheads like me to give you some encouraging words. Now, how did I know she was having this crisis? I didn't. God did. God said, Terry, start making these calls. I'm making calls to all the people who have come to the Spiritual Warfare Conference and hadn't signed up. I'm calling you to say, don't forget to sign up. But the lady answers the phone and she's frantic. And she had a family crisis. So I tell these stories of these miracles because they're still going on today. If you like the message of Virgin Most Powerful Radio, type in under comments, Jesus is King.